Listened to in 165 countries. Downloaded over 1 million times in 2014. Your one stop for scientific research on building muscle and gaining strength. Interviews with elite strength professionals and strength athletes, and a whole lot more. This is the Barbell One Show.
What's going on? And thanks for tuning in to Inside Natural Bodybuilding on the Barbell One Show. Be sure to check out our sponsors, barbell1.com and topsupplementsonline.com. Currently, Barbell One is having its only sale of the year, free shipping and 25% off all items through the end of November 30th, 2015. And I want to apologize for the hiatus away from regular episodes, but I'm currently uploading two very special interviews with two of this year's Natural Bodybuilding World Champions. I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to Inside Natural Bodybuilding and the Barbell One Show. I have a very special guest today. He is a multi-time lightweight natural bodybuilding world champion, and this year finally took a couple overall titles at the Yorton Cup and the WNBF Worlds. Many would consider him to be the most conditioned natural bodybuilder in the world, and today we're going to be talking about how he achieves that level of conditioning, balances it with the rest of his life, and many other interesting topics. So welcome to the show, Brian Whitacre.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you having me on, man. Always an honor to be here.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's someone I've been wanting to interview for a while, and I think just kind of with the way that you came onto the scene this year, definitely someone that everyone else wants to hear from too. I just know myself, I'd actually heard a rumor, I can't remember specifically, or maybe I shouldn't even disclose who it is, had told me that you were competing this year. And when they told me, they said, please keep it hush hush. She doesn't want anyone to know until closer to the time. And then I happened to notice that you released that video a few days before the Gaspari, and I'm like, all right, heck no, everyone needs to know now. And then that video seemed to really, kind of go viral, if you will, for natural bodybuilding, and everyone wanted to know, what was going on, why you were back, when you were competing, where you're competing, all that stuff. So why do you kind of take that approach of kind of hiding away a little bit, maybe announcing only a few days before? Is it to generate buzz, to kind of avoid the hype and just, be able to kind of be in your own world? Is it because you don't want to tip off your competition, or?
Yeah, so I have to be honest, I don't really see it as hiding. I know you probably have gotten this vibe from me. I'm not an overly social media-oriented person. I just don't get on Facebook very often. I don't post videos very often. And the truth of the matter was, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to show up to the stage. It's still kind of hard for me to believe that people actually care where I show up. But the truth of the matter is, I was talking to Doug Miller, and he kind of, I go over my contest prep plans with various people and et cetera, and he kind of told me, a couple of weeks before, and he was like, you really probably should say something. He's like, believe it or not, people actually do kind of follow you, and it'd be nice for them to be able to see you on stage. And I was like, I guess okay. So, I think it was just a little bit before the Gaspari, I posted something on Facebook about getting ready for the show, and yeah, it was kind of cool, the people were there at the Gaspari that had come to see me, and same thing at some of the other shows, so I think it's kind of cool. Again, I just don't see me competing as that big of a deal, so it's not really to avoid or, tip off competitors or whatever like that. I guess I just am still kind of in the mindset of, I'm just another competitor trying to earn my place.
Right. Would you say some of that, too, is just not wanting maybe the distraction? So let's just imagine a different scenario. Say you'd announce 3 months before. You'd probably have everyone constantly, oh, dude, progress photos. Where's your photos? And then, asking questions. What are you doing? How's your prep? Blah, blah, blah. Like, would that just be too distracting and overwhelming, or it's not even necessarily to avoid that?
No, I think that could very well play into it. Once you do make an announcement, there's people going to be clamoring for stuff. And, again, I'm not one to post a lot of pictures and stuff like that. So, I have kind of a close group of friends that know my plans, and I kind of associate with them, and we'll get feedback from them and stuff like that. So, yeah, it is kind of nice to avoid the larger picture of people asking for updates and things like that, I think.
Right. So you mentioned a close circle of friends, and obviously that's probably an important thing, particularly for someone like you that I think is doing your own prep, to have some other people to bounce ideas off of. If you don't mind sharing, not so that people can bug them on your behalf in future contest preps, but who are some of those people?
Yeah, so again, at this point, I've been around the natural bodybuilding scene for long enough that I know, a lot of the top guys, and so certainly Doug Miller is one of them. Lane Norton is another one. I've presented it multiple times at Lane's camp. He actually helped me out this year with some macros and some things as we got closer to peak week. Later on here, I'll talk about some of the programming I do with Dr. Mike Zordos. He does my programming. And then, I've got a really great workout partner here at OSU, Jason Vlasteras. He's a WNBF and IFPA pro as well. and of course my old buddy Kurt Widener back in Blacksburg. I trained with him for a couple of years, and I still see him as a valuable resource and someone who pushes just as hard as anyone. So those are kind of the main guys that I ask for feedback and stuff like that.
Nice, that's cool. Actually, Jason I met back at, I used to live in Florida for a brief period of time. So
yeah, he mentioned that. He knew you.
Yeah,
cool.
that was cool. And then also, let's go back to the Gaspari. Right behind you in the lightweights was Jonathan Lavoie, who's from my hometown back in Maine.
Yeah, he looked really good, man.
World.
I'd never really heard of him before, but he pushed me there. He's a really good bodybuilder.
Yep, yeah, it was his first show. So let's go back to that show. Obviously, didn't take the overall there, and I think some people, I don't know. I don't want to say that, like, of course Willie Brown is, a very seasoned competitor, but, people would say, oh, well, Doug Miller wasn't there. Or, oh, Rico wasn't there. I don't know, Russell Harrison wasn't there. Some of these kind of bigger name competitors that do that show a lot. And so some people might have thought like that was your show to win, and obviously you didn't take it. And so what was your mentality, or what were changes, or how did you kind of step it up to make sure that you got the nod at the Yorton?
Yeah, I was disappointed that I didn't win the Gaspari. And going back and looking at pictures, I thought, it was you could make a valid argument either way, and that's the nature of the sport, right? It was a 4-3 decision that went Willie's way, and like I always do, I emailed the judges right after the show, asked them for feedback, and of course the ones that said they had it going my way said, don't change anything, and the ones that had it going Willie's way said, well, you need to come in a little bit fuller, or just, they just basically said that Willie outmuscled me, which I can't disagree with. So, I just basically kept things the same over the next 2 weeks, tried to tighten up just a bit. I probably did lose a half pound or so over those next couple weeks. And again, just kept working on posing. I practiced posing a lot, and I really wanted to have my stamina show up there, and so that was something I focused on over those next couple weeks before the Yorton.
Nice. So this is actually the first time that you've taken those overall titles, and it's funny, I polled around some various people, Lane being one, Rico, Jeff Alberts, a variety of bodybuilders I know follow you and think highly of you, and asked them if they had any questions for you. And the repeated one that kept coming up was, they're like, he always takes the lightweights, and this year he took 2 overalls. What was the difference? Like, how did he do it?
Well, I don't know what the difference was. Finally, a close decision went my way, right? I mean, I've had him go the other way multiple times. So, I don't know if we're going to talk diet later on, but this is the longest I've ever dieted. I gave myself 26 weeks to the Gaspari, and then it was another 2 to the Yorton, and then another 3 to Worlds. So by the time we got to Worlds, it was 31 total weeks. And I mean, these are, pretty hard dieting weeks. I don't know if you want to get into specific numbers now or not, but I dieted very, very strictly for that entire time. I had a meal or 2 after both the Gaspari and the Yorton, but other than that, every day was picture perfect for that long. And again, I had some, I had to put a lot of thought into my prep this year because I had some injuries I had to work around, and so I couldn't do the same kind of cardio I had done in the past, and so it really, required a lot of thinking and manipulation on my part to be able to get into contest shape. And so that's something I'm kind of proud of, is that there was actually maybe a 2-week period of this prep when my injury was so bad that I thought about not competing this year, and I almost pulled the plug on prep. But I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did, obviously.
Right. Very cool. So, yeah, let's go ahead. You were saying you didn't know if we wanted to get into numbers or do I? Let's go ahead and get into them. So, we're 26 weeks out from the Gaspari. You're deciding that it's time to compete and stuff. Kind of walk us through, if you don't mind, in stages, the countdown, if you will, all the way to prep.
Yeah, so I had known, kind of throughout my last off-season. So the last show I'd done was 2013 Worlds, and lost a 1-point decision there to Siobhan. And so I knew I was going to take the next year off. My wife had twins, and so, of course, I wasn't going to compete that year. And so I targeted these kind of 3 shows because the WNBF had just opened up the rules about letting us compete elsewhere. I had targeted the Gaspari, Yorton, and Worlds, and I kind of knew that the dates and stuff like that. And so I knew I was going to have 26 weeks to the first one like I typically do. And so I probably sat around, 190, a little over 190 in the off-season, made as much strength gains as I possibly could. And so when I started dieting down, the first couple weeks I probably was a little bit too lenient, and I had my carbs, pretty high, and I'm always strict with fat, but my protein was sitting around 225, my fat is probably somewhere around 45, 50 in those first couple weeks, and then my carbs were probably too high. I was having some days where they were up 300 plus, and a low day was still in the kind of mid 200s. And after a couple weeks, I was like, this is not it's not working for me. I need to be more aggressive already. And so that was that was right around the point where I had my injury. And so there was about a 3 or 4 month period there where I was literally limping around campus. I limped to every workout. I could barely get around, and I couldn't do the kind of cardio I wanted to do. And so I realized I got to get more aggressive with this diet. And so for the vast majority of prep, I had my fats around 40, if not lower than 40. And again, 6 or 8 of those are coming from fatty acid, flaxseed oil or CLA or something like that. So not a whole lot of dietary fat in what I was taking in. And then carbs, a high day would probably be somewhere in the mid to upper 200s, and then a low day, I got, for a long time in prep, I had to get pretty aggressive, and they were right around 100 in some days. And so those obviously were not fun, but again, you just got to do what needs to be done. And again, I could not do the kind of interval training I wanted to for cardio, so I had to manipulate the diet in order to be able to get to contest level of leanness. And so that's what I did.
Right. So it's kind of interesting to me. You're not a very large guy, obviously you're a lightweight competitor, but it seems to me like, if you had to go that aggressively, there's not necessarily a lot of food to work with, and cardio is less of a tool at your disposal. So how do you think that you're able to, I guess, with that little food to work with, just kind of slowly whittle it away and achieve that level of conditioning? Or is that kind of typical for you that it doesn't take cutting much for things to really start coming off?
Yeah, no, it's typical. Those are kind of the numbers of, they're a little bit lower than they have been in the past because I couldn't do the cardio like I wanted to. But those are, and again, you give yourself 26 weeks. I never lost really even a pound a week. Is a little bit slower than that really. But just again, slow and steady wins the race. I didn't make any drastic changes, but when I needed to, I pushed a little bit harder. And again, I finally figured out some upper body interval training that I could do. So I did we have like a hand crank at our gym that I was using for intervals, and I did battle ropes. Lane introduced me to battle ropes, so I tried those. And eventually, probably with just a couple months left in the prep, my knee started feeling better. And again, Zordos worked with me to implement. Again, I hadn't squatted in like half a year, so I was really worried about how my legs would work. But he really helped me out in terms of putting together a programming that would let me train the way I could and bring my best package to the stage.
Nice. So I want to switch over to training in just a moment. While we're kind of on the topic of diet, let's just continue that briefly. So obviously you were being around Doug Miller and stuff, and we know that he took a much more aggressive approach peak week this year for his shows, carving up and stuff. And so was that an approach that you were interested in or tried playing around a little more, or doesn't quite fit you? Or
yeah, I did talk to Doug about that. I was actually picked his brain. I was like, so how much did you take in, and when did you take it in, and what was your approach? And he kind of walked me through it. And it was just too aggressive for me. And honestly, Lane was pretty crucial here, and he helped me out with what I went through for my peak weeks. And so Doug's peak week and what Cliff does is it's pretty amazing. But again, I was not used to that. It was a little too much for me. So, my peak week was kind of what I've typically done is just kind of slowly scale down my carbs that week, and then have I was more aggressive on the Friday and Saturday this year, than I have in the past. But that's really the only change I made. I don't really screw with sodium and potassium and stuff like that. Again, if you're in contest shape, you don't need to worry about that stuff. So really all we manipulated was carb intake. And so that's what I did on the peak weeks.
Nice. So then when you went to the Gaspari and you had that feedback that you perhaps need to be a little fuller, did you go a little more aggressive for the Yorton or stay about the same?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I did. And it was a weird situation too, because Yorton, we weren't on stage until late in the day on Saturday, whereas we were early in the day at the other shows. So I kind of had to play that by ear. And so actually I think I was almost a little too aggressive at the Yorton, because I didn't feel the best during the lightweight prejudging. But luckily, I ended up winning that class, and then it felt much better during the overall, and was able to beat Siobhan at the overall there.
Nice. So probably assimilated some more of those carbs and filled out really well.
Yeah, that's what I think happened. Yeah.
Yep. So What about how did you feel about that live judge format at the Gaspari? It's kind of different, like you mentioned. It does kind of throw with the timing a little bit.
Yeah, and this is the first time I had ever really had that happen. Every other pro show I've done, it's been the typical, you come in for prejudging and then the night show, so you have that break in between all that stuff. I liked it. I certainly thought it flowed really well. It's nice at the Gaspari. I mean, we were off stage, we were done completely with the show very, very early, which is great. So I'm a fan of the live judge format, definitely.
Very cool. So let's go ahead and circle back to training. You mentioned the knee injury, and I just want to kind of talk to you about, some of us who have followed you over the years see, a period where you went through a lot of front squatting to try and bring up your quads. I don't know if that you felt influenced your knee. I also noticed you're doing a lot more conventional deadlifts, it seemed, perhaps this last offseason than sumo. So talk to us about the movements, the overall programming and strategy, and why you were doing the things you're doing.
Yeah, so I did implement the front squats to try to bring up the quad sweep a little bit, and that's been a couple of years ago, and they've been a staple in my program ever since then. But like I said, it was probably around, I don't know, May or June of this year that I really kind of had to stop squatting. I developed a really bad case of osteoarthritis in my knee, and I've been to the specialist several times. We tried all kinds of solutions, and nothing seemed to work, and so I basically just had to stop squatting. And like I said, my legs really suffered for it. When I started taking progress pictures, I was like, oh man, I think I'm actually regressing. And so that was the point where I almost pulled the plug on prep. But I sent Zordos an email and said, you know what, let me try to work through this. Let me see what I can do. I even tried to do leg press, which is, a bad word in most bodybuilders' vocabulary. And I couldn't even do leg press because I could not get my legs down to 90 degrees. And so finally what I figured out I could do is a hack squat machine that we have here. And so it basically limits your movement to right at 90 degrees, and I was able to push up from that. And so basically the only leg movement I did for the last 3 or 4 months of prep was hack squatting. And again, the way Zordos built my programming, I was doing that 3 or 4 times a week, and again deadlifting 3 or 4 times a week. So I'm getting older now. I can't train 6 days a week anymore. I train 4 days a week, and again the daily undulating periodization that Mike is a proponent of has you changing your rep scheme. So you're doing heavy deads for 2 or 3 reps one day, and then you're pulling 5 or 6 reps another day. And same with squatting, you're varying your rep schemes throughout the week. So those are the main movements. And you're right, I did switch to conventional. One of the reasons is it's much easier on the knee for conventional versus sumo. And I also think it's better for back development. I was a lot stronger when I was pulling sumo, and I thought that was kind of cool for a while. And then I realized it's not doing all that much for my back development, so I switched back to conventional.
Gotcha. So that's obviously the rationale for conventional, but when you were doing sumo, was there any particular thoughts for implementing that to bring anything up, or it was simply just kind of, I can lift more weight, let's do this?
Yeah, for a while that was kind of what it was. I could pull more weight. It might put a little bit more stress on the hamstrings and things like that, but generally speaking, I thought maybe if I could overreach in terms of the weight I was moving, maybe that would influence my back development or leg development or whatever. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's the movement itself, even if it's with lower weight, is superior for conventional.
Gotcha. So I think, every bodybuilder that, especially one that's been at it as long as you have, has some things that they kind of swear by or staples of their methods. Sometimes other people will even critique them and say, oh, come on, that's not entirely necessary, or, they don't need to do that. But, it's just been something that's worked for you. And so, whether it be with your training or your nutrition or your posing or just something, could you think of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 principles that you just feel really are the key and have been super important to you over the last, decade or whatever, bodybuilding?
Yeah, good question. So, the beauty of daily undulating periodization is that you hit the money makers multiple times a week. You hit the deads, the squats, the military presses, the Pendlay rows. That's what's going to put muscle on your frame, and you hit them multiple times a week, and you change your rep scheme. You change, like you said, some people swear by high volume, some people swear by intensity. You change that every week when you're using DUP, and I think that's crucial for growth. For nutrition, it's just consistency, man. You got to hit the numbers every day, and you got to be consistent with it. So, again, I died a minimum of 26 weeks, and to get into shape, it takes me that long, from an off season of 190, 195 pounds, and then again, this is probably the best shape I've ever been in, and it took 31 weeks to get here. So it's simply consistency. And the same thing with posing. I started posing probably 10, 12 weeks out from the first show, and ramped up to basically where I was doing it every day, in the morning for at least 20, if not 30 minutes. And it's just, it is a time suck. It's a very selfish hobby, but it's something that needs to be done if you're serious about doing your best and looking your best on stage.
Nice. So you did kind of mention that, selfish hobby aspect, and that was a question that I wanted to ask you was, obviously as a family man, obviously having a wife, you mentioned just twins. I mean, gosh, my sisters had twins, so I know what that can be like. And, how do you, I guess, achieve that right level of balance? And I think, honestly, it's something even myself, not even having a family, like I think we all struggle with, where if you're pursuing other things aggressively in life, whether it be your career, your family, etc., where once in a while when you step away to focus on bodybuilding, you almost feel guilty, like, this is a selfish pursuit. I should be with them. I should be with my job. I should be with whatever. But at the same point, like, and anyone that has a well-rounded life likes to, I don't know, go golfing or fishing. And so for us, I guess it's bodybuilding. And so how do you kind of make sure that you get your me time without being, I guess, a douchebag to everyone else?
Yeah, and again, I've talked about this at Lane's camp a couple times, and people are always interested in that, because the way I see it is, and there was a little bit of debate about this on Facebook recently, I still see bodybuilding as a hobby. I mean, I put everything I have into it, but it's still a hobby. The first thing in my life is family. The second thing is my job, and then comes bodybuilding. Okay, so again, we have kind of a term here in the economics field. We call it constrained optimization. So I'm going to optimize how I do at bodybuilding, but that's subject to my family commitments and my work commitments. So, when I have to travel for work, when I have to get on a plane for work, I still try to optimize the way I'm going to be training and the way I'm going to be eating, but it's given the constraints that I have for my work assignment. And same thing with my family. First thing is I'm going to go to my daughter's play. I'm going to spend time with the twins when they're playing on the weekends. But after that, I'm still going to try to optimize my bodybuilding inputs the best way that I can.
Right. So maybe give us an example. So yeah, you are on a plane. You gotta head out for work, maybe a little bit short notice or whatever. Like, maybe give some examples of some adjustments that you make to keep up with things on the go.
Yeah. So I typically my work travel is 3 or 4 days, and I've gotten to the point where I can definitely easily pack a cooler of food that lasts 3 or 4 days. So I don't like to eat out when I'm on contest prep. I like to eat the foods that I've made myself, and so I've kind of perfected the art of bringing 3 or 4 days worth of food in a cooler with me. And the colleagues I see at conferences kind of give me a hard time. Oh, you're eating out of a Tupperware again or whatever, but they get used to it, and it's not a big deal after a while. They're used to seeing me not at the buffet and or just bringing my own food and stuff like that. So the harder part there is training, because it's hard to train at a hotel gym. It's hard to squat and deadlift at a hotel gym, so you got to do some research beforehand, find a nearby gym that you can walk to, and again, sometimes you got to call them and see if it's a gym you can deadlift at and stuff like that, and just got to, again, work it in the best way you can. And there have been times where there's nothing nearby, and I have to do a makeshift workout that does not squat and deadlift oriented, but again, that's a constrained optimization.
Right. So if we look at that, where we're talking about just kind of your overall dieting approach, many people would say that you have kind of I guess you'd say, a very basic traditional bodybuilding diet. And I think obviously when that's day-to-day life and stuff, it's very easy to fall into that habit. And I would actually argue, I think, makes life less stressful than having to calculate everything on an app, in my opinion. But I can obviously see, situations with family, holidays, traveling and stuff. I think some people might consider that more stressful, having to bring all these meals and things. And, I guess, why do you feel you've fallen into that approach? Or, do you feel that it works so well for you when so many people swear that, like, oh, being that rigorous and not being flexible, that causes eating disorders and problems? And again, I think it's neither here nor there. I just think it's important for people to see different examples where either approach can work.
Yeah, good question. And again, I'm certainly not gonna bash flexible dieting. I think it works very well for some people. I don't think it will work well for me, just because It comes down to two things. One is efficiency, and the second one is optimization. So you're right. It's very efficient for me when I make my meals on the weekend to make the exact same meals and make 7 of them, or however many I'm going to make for that week, and then I have them ready to go. And the other thing is, it's almost impossible for me, or it's very difficult for me to imagine someone else working harder, being better with their diet. I couldn't be able to live with that. And so I literally have to push myself as hard as I can to know that I'm bringing the absolute best package that I can to the stage. I wouldn't be able to live with the fact that someone else tried harder, and that's why they beat me. And so I can, honestly say I poured everything I had into this prep, and it was not easy. I had 1-year-old twins running around the house, and sometimes they were cranky, and I was on, having a low-carb day. But I never strayed from my dietary approach, and I can literally say I pushed myself as hard as I could in the gym and out. And so that's, I'm really pleased that this season ended the way it did, because I poured everything I had into it.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I just think, again, being a dietitian myself, we, I don't know, I guess we see multiple approaches in school. And then obviously, when you're around people out in the field, you see, people like, oh, those are the bros that do their old school dieting and Tupperware. And then you see people, oh no, flexible dieting is the only way to go. And I just think it's important for people to see that multiple approaches can work for different people. And I just have a really hard time with people saying that either approach is right for everyone. It just doesn't seem to me that, like, anything really should ever be that universal. It really has to come down to those circumstances.
Absolutely. And I will, certainly in the off season, I love eating at other places, and I'll work into the macros that I have for that day. And so I'm absolutely a flexible dieter in the off season. When it comes down to contest prep, again, to me it's all about optimization and efficiency. And for me, just having those, I don't think I have a what's referred to as a meal plan or anything like that. I'll definitely change the meals that I eat and the amounts of carbs and stuff like that. But it's based on what needs to be changed that week, what changes I need to make to again get down into contest shape.
Gotcha. What do you think competitors can do to ease the difficulty of contest dieting? It seems like, I think some people might argue like, he's figured something out that everyone else hasn't. Like, how does he get this lean? Or do you think it's literally just years of gaining this composure that you're just able to push that much further than everyone else at the end and just suck it up and get through those really tough weeks?
Yeah, I think the first thing there is, it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. It kind of irks me when people say, oh, he has good genetics for getting lean. Well, maybe, but it's not easy to get this lean. And you're right, mental toughness is absolutely crucial. If it was easy for everybody to get into contest shape, then you'd have a lot of really, really lean people walking around. It doesn't seem to be the case. So, yeah, I don't know that I have anything figured out. It is, I've been doing this for, over a decade now. I know what my body responds to and how to kind of push to that next level. Again, I have a very supportive family, which is helpful. And so again, I do pride myself on being mentally tough. And again, if I know what my numbers are for that day, I'm going to hit those numbers. Not a question. It's just something that's going to happen. And so, yeah, does it get rough sometimes? Sure. But again, you got to realize that the people that you're sharing your house with are not the ones who chose to make this commitment. You don't need to take it out on them. You don't need to, blow off your coworkers or blow up at your coworkers because you've only had 20 grams of fat that day. You need to, again, put your priorities in order and realize that you're the one making this commitment, and just, try to see it from other people's point of view.
Gotcha. Have you ever had a moment, I guess I'm speaking from my own experience, when I dieted in 2013, where you've had to almost just ask for a break briefly or ask for a moment to step away when maybe you're in one of those situations and you're about to like blow a fuse because of that, and you recognize it like coming on, and or you're just really able to deal with that well?
Yeah, I think I've gotten to the point where I can take a deep breath and deal with it in the moment. I don't know that I've ever had to say, just give me a second and go into another room or something like that. Although I will say, if there's a lot of yummy food being consumed in the room, I have certainly excused myself in instances like that when there's a group of people that are, eating pizza. I don't really care to be around them when they're stuffing their faces with pizza. But again, that's not all the time. It's just when the situation calls for it. So, yeah, I think that's a valid point. Rather than blow up at someone, it's much better to to just take a break and go, take a deep breath and try to reassess things.
Right. I guess I'm just looking forward to, if I prep again in future years, not having to do that, have gained a level of maturity, I guess, but it wasn't there at that time. But so anyways, coming back to, people saying you're perhaps the leanest, most conditioned bodybuilder, and then you saying, people will say, oh, he has good genetics for it, and you're like, wow, that's not really a fair comment. If you had to just like comfortably sit at a body fat level, there were no shows in your future, you just kind of were hanging out, enjoying bodybuilding, like, what do you think is a comfortable body weight and body fat percentage for you, so maybe people can kind of get a grasp of like, that it is a little foreign for your body to go that far?
Yeah. So for me, my kind of the highest off-season weight I'll get is probably around 190, 195. I've gotten to 200, and it's not pretty. And honestly, if I wasn't really pushing to get to that 190, 195, trying to gain weight, that's probably somewhere I would say I'm kind of at a set point. And again, my body fat there is it's definitely double digits. It's on the plus side of 10%. So I don't completely lose sight of my abs, but they're certainly not good competition abs at that point. So somewhere in the 185 to 195 for me. And again, it kind of irks me when people say, yeah, he gets conditioned, but he doesn't have very much muscle. Well, I train as hard as I can to get muscle. I mean, I'm pulling 600 pounds. I'm squatting almost 500 pounds. I train very, very hard to try to add muscle on my frame. And I don't know what else people want me to do. So it kind of irks me when people say he has good genetics for getting lean, but then they give me a hard time for not having enough muscle. But so just want to get off my chest, I guess.
Right. What are your thoughts on off-season weight? I'll just be honest with myself. I tend to hold probably a little higher body fat percentage than most people, and for no other reason than just it seems my body just feels more comfortable here. But obviously, to diet, it makes for a lot of work. I guess in terms of thoughts of like, it seems like to some degree, the more calories you consume, the more you put yourself in that surplus. Obviously you would think makes it more conducive to gaining more muscle, but you have to weigh that, of course, with not wanting to have to diet off too much weight as well. Do you believe in, to some degree, the more you can sneak your weight up, that it will cause you to gain more muscle, or do you think there is kind of a tipping point? Or
yeah, I think there's a tipping point. I think it's on the lower, right around that 10 to 15% body fat. I don't see any reason to get up over, honestly, 10 to 12% body fat. I think for me that's kind of the sweet spot in terms of adding, feeling nice and strong, adding good muscle mass, and still not having those extra percent of body fat to just burn away the first few weeks of prep. So that's for me. I just don't see any reason for most natural bodybuilders to get up to 20% body fat or something like that. But again, like you said, different strokes for different folks. Some people probably swear that they make great muscle gains at that 20%. But for me, like I said, when I got up to 200, it was just, well, then I dieted back down and I hadn't gained much. So it's kind of the... So
as we were scheduling this interview, you'd mentioned that, you're pretty particular about your schedule, and we were talking about, balancing it with family and other things. One thing that always interests me is different people, that have different careers. Some people work a very traditional, like, corporate 9 to 5. Some people it's in academia where maybe the classes and the sessions and stuff are a little more split up. Some people it's their own business where there's a lot of flexibility, but also like absurd hours. And just, I think different people pick those different flows to maybe suit perhaps their bodybuilding or overall desires for lifestyle. Do you feel that is kind of why you've settled into the setting you have, or does that play a role, or it's not even involved?
Well, so yeah, first of all, I am very anal about my schedule. In fact, you were 3 minutes late with this call, if I can say that. No, just kidding.
All good.
I think that's important for bodybuilders, and I think one thing that we can do as bodybuilders is be punctual and let others know that you expect that from them. Because if I have a 1 o'clock meeting scheduled, I expect that person to be in my room at 1 o'clock, and we can get down to business at 1:01. Because I need to eat at 1:30 sometimes, and that's what I have under my control. And so I absolutely love my job, and one of those reasons is because I do control my own schedule, and I can control when I eat and when I train. And so I don't think I would recommend that people try to find a job that works with their bodybuilding, because again, your career has got to come first. You've got to find a career you enjoy first, and then try to make bodybuilding fit around it. So for me, I love being in academia. I love doing research. I love interacting with grad students. I love interacting. I'm the faculty advisor for the weightlifting club here, so we got the young generation of powerlifters and bodybuilders coming up that I get to interact with. I love the fact that we have a gym here on campus. But again, my job is first, and then the nice thing is that, and again, I really enjoy it, and then I'm just fortunate enough that bodybuilding fits into what I enjoy for a living.
Very cool. So for those of you listeners that don't know, and I'm sure many of you do know that Brian has his PhD in economics, I believe it is.
That's right.
Yep. And so, some people might wonder, with all these years, like I just happen to notice, that it looks like you're researching, the, I guess, migration of internet connections into rural areas and stuff. And I feel like after years and years of researching that, one might say, oh, well, why doesn't he start his own business, something like that? Is that something that's in the future, or something that interests you, or what makes you choose the path you do versus maybe some other ways of pursuing that?
Yeah, one of the cool things about academia is you can do consulting work on the side, and I do some of that, and it kind of gives you a little nice income boost. But again, I'm very happy in academia. I love the steady paycheck that it comes with. Again, interacting with the students and other faculty, and again, you get nice travel opportunities across the country to meet with colleagues and stuff like that. So I don't see myself as going and starting my own business or do anything like that, just because I really love the academic environment. And again, it does mesh very well with this hobby that we call bodybuilding. And so I don't see myself going in any other kind of direction. I've actually gotten tons of emails over the years about people wanting me to do contest preps for them and stuff like that, and I don't have any interest in that. That's not where my education is. That's not really where my interest lies. I love the questions that I'm trying to answer as an economist, and I think they're important ones in the kind of the bigger picture, and so that's what I like to focus on.
Nice. So obviously, with you advising and kind of mentoring young students and grad students in that setting, you're around people all the time trying to find the right fit for them, whether it be back in academia, whether they pursue a PhD, they go on to do their own business, etc. Like, what would be your advice for others in terms of trying to find the right lifestyle, I guess, setting with their work, and maybe any common mistakes you see in people kind of ending up in the wrong setting?
Yeah, again, to me, I wouldn't think so much about the setting as I would, do you enjoy the job? I mean, the job has got to be something that you look forward to doing every day. And so, I mean, a good example here is, I've had some opportunities to look at other jobs, but they would require a lot more travel. And that's not something I would enjoy, just for one reason. Time away from my family is not something I want at this point in my life. And the other thing is that, yes, it would make bodybuilding harder if I had to spend a lot more time on the road. So that is something I think about, and I would recommend people consider for a job. But again, it's the bigger picture of, do you enjoy the job? And if so, then you can make your bodybuilding fit into it. Because again, no one's priority in life should be natural bodybuilding. That's it's silly, and it's not going to change in my lifetime where people are making a living from natural bodybuilding. So I would advise them to find a career that they enjoy and look forward to, and then make bodybuilding fit around that.
Right. So you actually led me perfectly into my next question, which is basically, does it ever frustrate or upset you that you're one of the top natural bodybuilders in the world, and yet there's still so little financial return for your efforts? And if you had the option to be a bodybuilder for a living, would you be one, or would you need your current career to kind of round out the overall just life and different pursuits that you have?
So first question was, does it frustrate or upset me? No. There's 0% chance I would be a full-time bodybuilder if I had the option. Frankly, I need the mental stimulation of coming to work every day. That's why I love my job. I love sitting at a computer and cranking numbers with people and looking at different models and reading academic papers. I'm not someone who could just go to the gym every day and be happy. I need the mental challenge from a job like I have, and so short answer is I need a career like this to have the life that I want. So
nice. How about for others though? Maybe there's some other people that they want to make their living, I don't know, making instructional DVDs or programs, or developing products, or coaching other people, and then just obviously pursuing their own training and nutrition to a very high level.
Absolutely.
You probably know people like that.
People that have a passion for that, I admire them. I mean, look at Lane. He has made, I don't know, I'm sure he's very well off financially, and he does, his career involves around the fitness industry, powerlifting, bodybuilding. There's a ton of awesome coaches out there doing entrepreneurial stuff, and I love that, making videos and starting small businesses and writing books and things like that. I think it's awesome, and I really admire those people for that. And I think that's actually a nice. I mean, that's not making a full-time living from bodybuilding. That's having a career and then being a bodybuilder on top of that. It so happens that your career is in the fitness industry, and so I have a lot of respect for that. I don't necessarily have so much respect for people that just expect to be paid for being bodybuilders, because I think that's kind of silly.
Right. Yeah, no, it's always interesting to me because people, when you think about it, you're like, this is how I've always looked at it. Like with bodybuilding or powerlifting, to some degree, obviously there's a definite genetic component to your structure, but I think within reason, quote unquote, almost anyone, if they pursue it hard enough, long enough, serious enough, they can achieve a pretty high level of, competition. And so it's like, does one gravitate towards something like that where there's very little return, but the thought of going to the top is reasonably attainable, versus say like the NFL or NBA or something where the return is huge, but the odds of getting there are so slim. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the odds are very, very slim of making it to an NFL or NBA. But yeah, I'm not. So what was the initial question again?
Yeah, just if you had a young person and you could see they were really passionate about pursuing something athletic, and you're going to steer them towards, here's this path where you can basically go within reason, kind of to the top if you pursue it really hard, but there's very little return for you, versus pursue this almost unattainable goal of getting there, but if you do, the return's going to be huge.
It gets back to where their passion is. I mean, I'm not going to ever tell someone to not do something just because the percentage chance of them making it there are low. So if they have an absolute passion for trying to make it to the NFL or NBA, I'm going to tell them to go for it. But that said, you gotta, if they're senior year in high school and they're still on the bench, they're probably not going to make the NBA, right? So it is worth talking to about, hey, there's some other avenues here that you could potentially get into.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that's a good point.
Right. Some people talk about how natural bodybuilders are so humble, and you in particular, and people, he's so humble and stuff. Do you think that would change if there was more money and fame involved in the sport? So in some ways it's a good thing that we kind of have this smaller status, or what are your thoughts?
For me, it certainly would not change it. I mean, that's just the way I was raised. I don't ever see myself, I still don't see myself as a very good bodybuilder. I think I've got a long way to go. And so if there's more money or fame involved, if more money, you might get some more people that are kind of want that attention and want the lifestyle that comes with it. So maybe, but I kind of agree with you, to be honest. I kind of like the way natural bodybuilding is right now, because the people who do it because they love it. And you're right, there's no money in natural bodybuilding. I just won a couple of pretty good shows, and still it's not a whole heck of a lot of a payday for me. So I actually like the way it is right now.
Right. So if Brian Whitacre wins a title in a few years and the purse is $30,000, it won't change.
No, it definitely won't change me.
Yeah, that's cool. So obviously, let's circle back as we kind of wrap up here. Competing before having a wife and kids and twins and stuff is probably a little bit different than now. And people, I think there's people that in this mentality of like, oh, we want to see the best people every year, we want to see all these great matchups, and then the other people that are a little more understanding of like, no, let's give everyone a few years to really take some time off and make some gains and stuff. But in terms of the bigger picture, do you personally, obviously you mentioned twins in this particular off season, but do you kind of base your contest seasons off of trying to have a couple years to take some family time, and you have to kind of get that all in order before you'd even consider stepping on stage again? Or
yeah, I mean, I think that's, again, comes down to the person. There have been years, when we had our first child, I competed back-to-back years, and that's a conversation I have with my wife, with my family every year about, okay, let's think about, here's the opportunities I have. It would, again, mean I would be dieting this many months and that kind of stuff. And so I think it's a personal decision, but again, natural bodybuilding, you've almost got to take some time away from the stage to be able to make improvements. And so that's why you see the Doug Miller 5+ years of off season becoming more prominent for people and more accepted. And so Yeah, it's cool to be able to see the big names up there every year and see them compete against each other. But in the real world, it's not going to happen for everyone. And again, I think it's a personal decision that should be made at the family level, not just at the competitor level.
Right. So when you do finally get on stage, I noticed particularly, I guess, from the Gaspari show, sometimes it just seems like you're super energetic. You're almost like bobbing up and down, like, all right, next pose, like just going at it type thing. And then other people, they have like this, stone face. They look like they're ready to die or something. What's going on in your head on stage? Is it literally kind of like a itching where you take a couple years off and you just like can't wait to get up there and show what you got again, or kind of how's your, I guess, thought process on stage?
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that, because I think it did come through definitely at the Yorton and at Worlds, I think, because honestly, I tell myself backstage before those moments, I say, you know what, you just put in 31 weeks of work. Every rep you put in was for this moment, so go enjoy it, go get it. And so I want the judges to see how bad I want it, how much I've worked for this moment. And so it is fun for me up there, and I love every second of it. But it's really about just trying to enjoy the moment, and again, recognizing that it's 10 minutes of fun for the 31 weeks of hard work that you put in.
Right. No, that's cool. That's awesome. I think that's a great mentality to have with it. I find sometimes I can even think of shows where I've been at where like when the classes were going on or whatever got a little thrown off and everyone's just sitting there bitching and stressing over, I didn't get enough time to pump, I didn't get enough time to this, whatever. And you're like, well, so did everyone else in your class, dude. Just make the best of it. Let's go, So everyone's going to want to know, obviously, when's the next time you're stepping on stage? Do you even know? How long does it take you after each show to kind of, I guess, calm down, reflect, and kind of think, okay, here's what I need to bring up or do for the next approach. Let's go ahead and, tackle an off-season plan.
Yeah, and so the short answer is no, I don't know. How long it takes me, it can take, a year to more than that before I make a final decision. On the plane ride back from a contest, I always put together, or the last contest of the season, I always put together a list of things I need to prioritize and kind of my first few months of off-season training about how I think I'm going to do that. And so I need to still talk to my family, talk to my wife, and think about, what the next step is. The thing people have already mentioned to me is no one's defended the WNBF World overall title since I think Rob Hope did it in back 03, 04, something like that. And so that's one thing that might be drawing me back. But on the other hand, I've got twin 1-year-olds that I need to spend more time with, and again, some family commitments and work commitments over the next year that will probably take some time as well. And again, if you want to get better, you're going to need some time in the gym and with a little bit of fat on your body to help gain some muscle.
Right.
So short answer is I don't know, and yeah, it is a little bit different for me this year because I did accomplish what I wanted to, whereas in previous years I never had that feeling of complete satisfaction. So that'll play a role, but again, I'll talk it over with the family and we'll make a decision. Yeah, at least it won't be made in the next month or two. It'll be made over the next 6 months.
All right, so imagine we're sitting next to you on the plane looking over your shoulder as you're writing this list. What's the list for the priorities?
Well, actually, I don't think it's here. I think it's at the house. So first thing that needs improvement is calves. I mean, that's the same every year, unfortunately, for me. I got to bring the calves up. I actually, this year, the thing that stood out to me I was really fortunate. I got some really cool pictures of the overall of me against Cleveland and Siobhan. I mean, those guys, you talk about just muscle density and fullness, and that's awesome to be able to see how you compare body part for body part against competitors that are that good. And so that's exactly what I did, is just look at the picture and say, okay, well, the other thing that stood out to me when I was comparing myself to those guys is I need a lot more chest fullness and arm fullness. So triceps in particular, chest in particular, and again, those are body parts that I'm not blessed genetically in, but I can, I've made progress over the years, and I'll keep working at it as well. Still need some more quad sweep, and again, hopefully, if this injury heals up, I'll be working on that as well. And I even think, my hamstrings are good, but that's primarily because I get lean. I need a little bit more mass there. I need to work on some hamstring mass. And again, I was kind of limited. I couldn't do a whole lot of stiff-legged deads because of this injury. So I'll definitely be prioritizing those. So I literally have a numbered list of things I want to prioritize, and then I work them into a kind of a 4-day split of, okay, what exercise is going to hit those, what rep range I'm going to hit them in, and that kind of stuff. So it's fun. That's what I do on the plane ride back.
Nice. Would you say just the overall approach to any of those body parts is basically just ramping up either the volume, the frequency, to just focus on them in a kind of prioritized list of calves is number one, whatever is number two? Cool. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Let's wrap up with maybe one random factoid, something that not much people know about you, something that would be really unique that all your fans would be like, huh, I never knew that.
Well, I think, I think people know that I have children and I'm a dad and that kind of stuff, but I don't think people really recognize how dedicated I am to my kids. I love every day when I come home from work, all I want to do is spend time with them. And in fact, for the overwhelming majority of this last prep, we put the twins to bed at a certain hour, and so for the last half hour of every day, I spent playing Barbies with my 4-year-old. And I love those 30 minutes I had with her to play Barbies and then read her a story and put her to bed. And I just really, my kids don't care that I'm a bodybuilder. And to me, I'm much more proud of the fact that I'm a good dad than I am that I've won a couple of bodybuilding shows, and that really means a lot to me.
That's awesome. Really great perspective on life, and I think it's good for a lot of us younger guys to hear. I want to thank you very much for coming on, Brian, and we look forward to seeing future updates from you, seeing how your off season goes, and the next time you step on stage.
Absolutely, John. Thanks for the interview, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Take care. Currently, Barbell One is having its only sale of the year, free shipping and 25% off all items to the end of November 30th, 2015.
Go to barbell1.com now.